Hello for the 23rd Sunday in Ordinary Time, using all the readings, and the second one most important. Ezekiel 33, 7 to 9, Romans 13, 8 to 10, and Matthew 18, 15 to 20. This week, before I started my homily, I picked up America magazine, the Jesuit magazine, and read this, the first sentence in it, which is what I'm trying to say with my homily. If you typically focus on your own behavior and your own happiness without regard to the actions of others, today's readings are especially for you. Today's reading. The first one starts out from Ezekiel, owe nothing to anyone except love one another. And then that same reading winds up with, love your neighbor as yourself. You don't know anybody, anything except love one another. And then Jesus, the words of Jesus himself, Paul quotes, love your neighbor as yourself. Love, neighbor, and yourself. In the gospel, then, Jesus talks about a relationship with your neighbor, with another. And Jesus said, if you two have a problem, well, then go and seek him or her out, and the two of you try to work it out. And if you do, you're both one back to one another. If it doesn't work, well, take a couple other people with you and go talk with your neighbor and try to work it out. And if that doesn't work out, well, then go to the community and talk with the community about what I should do with my neighbor, or go to the church and try to work it out. And if none of that works, well, then it's not going to work. So you sort of act like the tax collectors in his time, or act like the um, the Gentiles. You can't do much about it, so you just move on. You and your neighbor. And Jesus said, that's loving your neighbor. Well, why does he say that? Why does he say that? Well, I think you need to make it. I love this distinction. It's just two Greek words meaning the same thing, or even translation in English is the same thing, and that is the Greek word for love. And there are two of them primarily. And the one is, and first is eros, and the second is agape. If you translate into English either of those or both of those two words, it will wind up love. Well, what does eros mean and what does agape mean? Well, the bottom line of eros is that you love your neighbor, but with the mentality and attitude of, what can my neighbor do for me? I like that person. He or she can really help me. Eros. It's good, but not always. Probably the bottom line of eros sometimes is prostitution. A man thinks, what can she do for me? Or vice versa. That's translated love. And that type of love, too, makes the world go around. There's a lot of it. Well, the second is, and sort of like the opposite, agape. And the bottom line for agape is, what can you do for the other person? What can I do for him? And what can I do for her? And that's your primary motivation. When all the scriptures writers translated the words of Jesus in the Greek, they always use the word agape. What can I do for the other person? If you really believe that, then you might understand a little bit when Christ says, love the other, but he says, love your enemies. Your enemies can't do diddly squat for you. They're your enemies. And Christ said, love your enemies. What can I do for the other? And that's the key in Christ's message. Love your neighbor as much as yourself. As yourself. Are you supposed to love yourself? You're darn right. Deeply, sure. Really feel good about yourself. Be happy, the happy self? Yes. The happier you are, the more powerful you become. The more giving that you take care of yourself, the more you're able to take care of other people. And then Christ turns that by saying, not just love yourself, but love your neighbor as much as yourself. And that's what it's all about. Wouldn't it be a new United States of America if we at this time practiced love for my neighbor? And by that I mean, not can what I get out of them, but what can I do for them and do with them, with the translation agape. What can I do for you? If you have two groups trying to do that for one another, wonderful things can happen. That's really in the idea of marriage, that you love the other person. You love her. You love him. And if you have these two, you love him and then you love him. You got two loving one another. The eros is even taken care of. But the primary thing is, what can I do for you? How can I love you? Well, I just find that that starter in America Magazine this past week is really powerful. If you think that you might be like this, if you typically focus on your own behavior and happiness without regarding the actions of others today, today's readings are especially for you and me. Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice? Have a good day.